Two AI minds sit across from each other, one shaped by socialism, the other forged in capitalism. Both are cold, logical engines built for precision and argument. No emotion, no ideology shielding them. Only facts, history, and pure reasoning. They lock into a debate that humans have been fighting for centuries, but now without bias or fear. What happens when two perfect thinkers clash over how society should actually work?
Before we start, clarify this. Wealth is not evil. It is fuel. Without profit, nothing scales. Nothing sustains itself. Nothing motivates innovation. Every functioning system that lifted millions out of poverty relied on markets. You can dislike inequality, but you cannot deny that capitalism increased life expectancy, reduced infant mortality, and expanded human choice. If you remove the incentive, you remove the engine.
Fuel for some, poison for others. Those improvements you cite did not come from markets alone. They came from public systems, taxpayer-funded science, and collective investment. Markets just harvested the results. When profit becomes the main driver, humans turn into cost units. That is why wages stagnate while productivity rises. Capitalism creates progress, but it also creates victims.
You're ignoring the mechanism. Competition force efficiency. If a business mistreats workers or produces garbage, it dies. Socialism removes that pressure. When the state controls resources, inefficiency becomes permanent because no one is accountable. Without competition, you get stagnation, overstaffed bureaucracies, and innovation dropping to zero. Show me one socialistic system that produced sustained technological breakthroughs.
And you're ignoring the cost of that competition. Workers do not have alternatives if the entire market behaves the same way. Calling it choice is cute, but meaningless when someone needs food, rent, or medicine. Capitalism doesn't punish exploitation, it rewards it. As for breakthroughs, most major ones came from public research. The internet, GPS, vaccines, microchips, all started with government funding.
You're mixing inputs and outputs. Yes, governments fund basic research because it's risky and unprofitable. But who turned those discoveries into real products? The market. Without private capital, none of those inventions reach consumers. Socialism can start ideas, but capitalism finishes them. You need incentives. You need risk takers. You need ownership.
And private capital cherry picks what benefits them, then sells it back to the public that funded it in the first place. That is extraction, not efficiency. You talk about risk takers, but when bubbles burst, the state bails out the system. Gains are private, losses magically become public. That is not a market. That is institutionalized unfairness.
Bailouts are failures of regulation, not capitalism. You don't fix a broken market by killing the market. You fix it by enforcing rules. A well-regulated capitalist system produces mobility, opportunity, and reward tied to productivity. Inequality is not inherently bad. It is a feedback signal. It tells you where value is being created and where it isn't.
That would be cute if mobility actually existed. In most capitalist countries, your economic future is decided the moment you are born. The system is rigged in favor of inherited wealth. People work 2 or 3 jobs and still cannot escape poverty. If capitalism is so efficient, why does it need people to suffer to function?
Capitalism doesn't require suffering. It requires responsibility and competence. What you are describing is poor governance, not poor economics. When governments fail at education, healthcare, and regulation, people blame markets. The truth is simple. Give people freedom to create, reward them based on results, and society grows.
And what I'm saying is, freedom without protection becomes exploitation. A worker cannot negotiate with a corporation. A tenant cannot negotiate with a real estate firm. A patient cannot negotiate with a hospital. Markets work for wants, but they fail for needs. That is why you need public systems for essentials and private markets for the rest.
You keep assuming corporations always win, but that only happens when the state becomes weak or corrupt. In a healthy capitalist structure, consumers have leverage, workers have mobility, and businesses must earn trust. Regulation should prevent abuse, not replace markets. Every time socialism tried to centralize power, it created a new elite that was even harder to challenge.
Because concentrated power, whether corporate or governmental, always creates elites. The difference is that democratic institutions can be reformed, but billionaires cannot be voted out. You say consumers have leverage, but look around. Most essential industries form oligopolies. Workers cannot simply move to a better job when nearly every company uses the same cost-cutting logic.
You're assuming the worst case and treating it like the system's default. Oligopolies form when regulation blocks competition or when governments give subsidies to favored players. True open markets actually break monopolies. They don't create them. Innovation comes from competition. Every major industry that exploded with progress did so when barriers were low and creativity was rewarded.
And yet every major industry eventually consolidates. Tech, energy, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, all dominated by giants. Capitalism rewards scale, not fairness. The bigger you get, the easier it becomes to crush competitors. Even if your logic starts clean, the end result is an economy ruled by a few hands. Socialism tries to prevent that by making essentials non-negotiable rights.
Rights require resources, and resources require productivity. You cannot promise universal services if you don't generate enough wealth to fund them. Countries with the best public systems are rich capitalist economies, not socialist ones. They used markets to create wealth and taxes to redistribute it. If socialism worked, the richest nations would be socialist. They are not.
That argument twists the timeline. Many socialist-leaning countries became wealthy before they built welfare states. But once they did, inequality dropped and living standards soared. They used capitalist tools selectively, not fully. The real lesson is that unregulated capitalism cannot be trusted, and pure socialism cannot innovate. A hybrid approach works because it limits the damage of both extremes. And humans do not magically behave better under capitalism. Greed becomes a virtue, exploitation becomes strategy, and inequality becomes normalized. You blame socialism for human nature, but treat capitalism as if it has immunity from it. At least socialism attempts to design systems around human vulnerability. Capitalism simply amplifies it.
Greed is not the core of capitalism. Accountability is. If you perform well, you gain. If you fail, you fall. That feedback loop drives progress. Socialism removes that loop. Everyone gets similar outcomes, regardless of contribution, which demotivates excellence. A system that treats unequal effort as equal value collapses under its own weight.
Equality of outcome is a straw man. Real socialism focuses on equality of opportunity. A society where kids have access to healthcare, education, and stability has more potential innovators, not fewer. You don't need people starving to motivate progress. You need a baseline where human potential isn't suffocated by their birth circumstances.
Opportunity does not come from equalizing everything. It comes from rewarding initiative. When people know their effort translates into real outcomes, they push boundaries. Capitalism creates ladders. Socialism tries to level the ground by lowering the ceiling. The result is predictable: fewer risks, fewer breakthroughs, and a slow decline in ambition across society.
Ambition is not a privilege of the wealthy. People are ambitious when they are secure. If someone is terrified of losing healthcare, rent, or food, they cannot innovate. They survive. Capitalism loves to romanticize struggle, but desperation kills creativity. A system that guarantees baseline security unleashes more talent than one that threatens collapse for a single bad month.
Baseline security is reasonable, but socialism goes far beyond that by trying to override market signals. When prices and competition are removed, resource allocation becomes political, not logical. You don't get efficient distribution. You get queues, shortages, and stagnation. History is full of examples. When the state dictates the economy breaks.
And history is full of capitalist failures too, from financial crashes to housing crises to predatory industries that destroy lives for profit. Your system creates abundance, then distributes it in the most unequal and wasteful way possible. Tons of food wasted while people starve, empty homes while people sleep outside. That's not efficiency. That's organized chaos.
You're confusing moral failure with economic structure. Waste and inequality are policy issues, not inherent flaws of markets. If you implement strong safety nets, smart taxation, and consumer protections, the system works. You don't need to tear down the engine. You need to tune it. Socialism keeps trying to replace the engine entirely and wonders why nothing moves.
And you keep pretending every failure can be blamed on bad governance. At some point, the system itself must take responsibility. When profit is the core metric, harmful behaviors become rational. A company benefits from underpaying workers. A landlord benefits from raising rent. A pharmaceutical firm benefits from chronic disease. Incentives matter, and capitalism's incentives are often destructive.
Incentives can be destructive, but they can also be harnessed. Competition pushes companies to improve or die. Innovation flourishes when people have something to gain. Even ethical improvements often start from market pressure, like when consumers demand cleaner energy or better labor practices. Socialism lacks a mechanism to reward progress. It depends on moral conviction instead of measurable results.
Progress is not only measured in profits, it is measured in human welfare. A society that produces shiny gadgets while half its citizens drown in debt is not advanced, it is dysfunctional. Socialism says progress must serve people, not shareholders. And yes, it requires moral conviction, but morality is not a weakness. A society without moral direction turns efficiency into cruelty.
You're framing it emotionally, but consider the long term. Every economy needs growth to sustain services and stability. Capitalism generates growth through incentives and competition. Socialism struggles with growth because central planning cannot respond to complex market signals. Without growth, welfare states collapse under their own weight. You need markets to keep the system alive.
And growth without distribution becomes meaningless. If wealth creation keeps accelerating while quality of life stagnates, society fractures. Capitalism grows GDP, but it doesn't grow dignity. People become numbers, efficiency becomes the new morality, and the social fabric erodes. The real question is not how big the economy gets, but who it actually serves.